Hello everyone, and welcome to Retro Brick Reviews, where today we'll be taking a look at LEGO Star Wars, set number 75301, Luke Skywalker's X-Wing Fighter. This set, based on the original Star Wars movie, also known as Episode 4 A New Hope, includes 474 pieces, 4 figures, 3 minifigures plus 1 droid to be specific, and it retails for about $50 in the United States. That's about 45 Great British pounds, or 50 euro. And, without any more further ado, let's begin, starting with the minifigures. Our first minifigure is, of course, Rebel pilot Luke Skywalker, who flew under the callsign Red 5 during the Battle of Yavin. Starting off with the accessory, you can see that this figure comes with just a standard blue lightsaber. This is the design that we've had for a great many years, with the metallic silver painted hilt, which looks quite nice in my opinion, but nothing too special. And just removing that, you can see that this is a fantastic looking Luke figure. The torso and legs are new, but we'll actually start at the top with that helmet, which is very much not new, in fact dating back all the way to 2010, but I think that print still holds up very well, where you have the multiple stripes in the center, the 2 Rebel insignias, and then on the sides you have these small areas with the yellow and red check marks. I'm not really sure what those mean, but they're accurate to the movie, and they're there. And around the back, there is no printing except for the continuation of those stripes. Now, I will note that the printing on this helmet is a little faded, but I don't think that's a huge deal. The face print originated in the Junior's X-Wing in 2019, but I think that this front face, at least, works really well for Luke. I think this is a good likeness to Mark Hamill, and I like the colors used for the visor. And I should note that if you can't tell, this set did switch back to using the classic style of X-Wing pilot helmets, rather than the very awkward and large helmets they introduced in the 2018 X-Wing. We've known that LEGO was going to stick with the older design for a while now. It was essentially confirmed with the 2020 AT-AT, but it's still nice to just have the final nail in the coffin for those updated designs. But yeah, if we remove the helmet, you can just get a bit of a better look at that face print. And around the back, we have an alternate print, where you can see that Luke has his visor flipped up, and a more chipper expression. And this face I'm not as hot on. For one, because him flipping the visor up is something that he never does in the original movie. That's purely an Empire Strikes Back detail, which, again, since this is based on the climax of the original movie, I would have liked to have a face print entirely based on that. And also because this big smile, that's way too chipper for the Battle of Yavin. I mean, it was kind of a bloodbath for the Alliance. So I definitely would have liked to have an alternate face with the visor still flipped down, but with a different expression. Maybe one a bit more aggressive or worried. I don't know, I feel as though either of those would have just fit the scene a lot more than this. But still, if you just keep it flipped around to the front side, it's a good face, in my opinion. Now, the torso and legs are what's new on this figure, but they might not look that new at first. I'll just point out all of the major differences compared to the previous version now. You can see that the main control panel is slightly tilted off to the side. The hose now goes off to Luke's left and clips into his vest, as opposed to the previous version where it went down and to his right, going off the side of his leg. And those are the major differences, but then for a lot of minor differences, if we compare this to the previous version, the torso being from 2014 and the legs from 2017, you can see that they've just added a lot more detail to the orange jumpsuit underneath, with a lot more wrinkles and creases, as well as they've added more detail to the light gray parts. You can also notice that they did remove a small gadget that was on his belt originally, and if I had to guess, all of these different small changes came from the fact that that earlier design was based on a combination of his Star Wars appearance and his Empire Strikes Back appearance, whereas this figure is based purely on that original film, which I do prefer in this case. And if we turn him around to the back, you can just see a continuation of that vest detailing, which looks very nice. And for one more comparison to the older version, you can see that the new one has a white strap across the back that is absent on the older design. Or more accurately, on the older design, it is behind the vest, whereas on the new one, it fastens in front of it. And you can also see that the printing on the new one is a lot more opaque. The old one, you can definitely see the orange through the vest a bit. So yeah, so this figure is definitely an upgrade in detail, as well as just general quality. But yeah, in my opinion, this is just a really great new Luke figure to have. A great update to the previous design, and there's not much more to say than that. It's just a fantastic figure of Red 5. I'm standing by. Next up is a figure that is far less exciting, but just as important. Here we have everyone's favorite astromech droid, R2d2. You know him, you love him, you own 15 different copies of him, but hey, this is the updated version that was introduced in 2020, where he has slightly larger blue indicator lights and a slightly smaller main eye. But really, for all intents and purposes, this is the same standard R2 figure they've had since 2016, which, for all intents and purposes, was the same standard R2 figure they've had since 2014. But anyway, it's just a normal-looking R2-D2. The head is cast in the pearl silver color, as it has been for quite a few years now. With the dark blue print around, it looks quite nice, with some highlights of shiny silver, as well as the different colors for the lights. The body still just has printing on the front, where you have his main panels and all of the different little details that make up the front of R2-D2. Very accurate to the movie, of course, but it's just on the front, so nothing on the sides, which you would expect, nothing on the back, which I think by this point is a little disappointing. Like, it's 2021. They could probably bear to put something on the back. But yeah, and then of course, just the same two legs. I wouldn't expect any printing there, even though it would be nice to have a little bit of detailing for the brown hoses at the bottom. But yeah, just normal R2-D2 stuff. No third leg, but considering that this is an X-Wing, if they are going to introduce a third leg piece at some point, this isn't the set to include it in my opinion. But yeah, it's a normal R2, which is exactly what you would expect. Now personally, I think it would have been cool if they would have done one with black paneling, as a reference to how in the theatrical cuts of the first two movies, because of the blue screen effect, in the space scenes, all of R2's panels have the blue removed, thus making them black. But seeing as how that's non-canon and has since been edited out with the special editions, it's obvious why they would never include that in a set. I just think it would have been a cool thing to have for the sake of some extra accuracy to the original versions of the film, as well as just a fun variant. But I've talked for too long about a standard R2-D2 figure, so now let's move on to the next figure. Our third figure is Princess Leia Organa of the House of Alderaan, and if you haven't noticed by this point, this set deviates from the standard set by previous X-Wings in that it doesn't include a second set of pilot and astromech. This set just has Luke, R2, and then a couple of other figures, which is good in some ways and bad in others, but seeing as how this set definitely feels as though it's meant primarily to be an a new X-Wing playset, I think that including more characters to have on the side was probably the best choice in this case. But anyway, this Leia figure is not new, but it's a good one to have since the only set this specific variant previously appeared in was the Tantive 4. Starting at the top, she has the newer style of bun hairpiece that was first introduced with the 2011 Millennium Falcon, and has not appeared in very many sets since then, so it's definitely a good one to have here. The face print is the most recent design that we've had since 2019, and it is definitely my least favorite part of this figure. I just don't think this looks very much like Carrie Fisher at all. And the same goes if we reverse to the alternate face, where this one's even worse, because at least with the front face, that sort of sarcastic smirk feels like a Carrie Fisher emotion, even if it's not really a good likeness to her as a person, but this face just looks weird, because it's that face that LEGO does a lot, and I never understand it, where it's like an angry smile? Yeah, I just don't think this works in any way. Personally, for the original Star Wars, I think that what would be best would be a face for the front, somewhat like this, but, you know, actually looking like the actress. And then for the alternate face, probably have a face that's a bit more solemn, I guess it would be the best way to say it. But yeah, and for the details, it feels like the eyes don't really work. I feel as though they should have, I don't know, maybe made those a bit larger, or I'm not really sure how to describe it. And then for the lips, they just went with the light peach color, which I completely disagree with, because Leia was wearing red lipstick. It was very reflective and shiny, but still, I think that going with dark red would have been a lot more accurate than peach. And if you wanted to go for the shiny, then honestly, I think the most accurate color would honestly be if they printed on some metallic bronze, which might have looked a little strange, but just thinking about it, in my opinion, that would be the most accurate sheen. And also, again, just for the original movie, for this specific outfit, I think they should have printed some blush onto the cheeks. I don't know, just spitballing here, but in my opinion, any of those changes could have helped to make this be a better face print for the character and for the actress. But moving on, the torso and dress piece are very simple, as they should be, really. But you do have her nice silver belt. But other than that, this is just a very simple design, which again makes sense because it was a very simple costume. And then around the back, you just have a continuation of the belt, all of your different wrinkles and lines down the dress, as well as a print for her hood, that looks very nice in my opinion, and I still hope that one day LEGO will make a piece for Leia with her hood up over her buns, as it was during the hologram recording scene, but I doubt that's coming anytime soon, judging by the fact that in the Skywalker Saga game, we've seen that during that scene they just have her with the standard white hood piece on. But anyway, that aside, which wouldn't factor into this set at all, this is a really great Leia figure to have. It's a great one for them to include, especially in such a less expensive set as this one. Oh, and almost forgot to mention, her accessory is just a standard black blaster pistol. Nothing too uncommon, but still a good piece to get. For the final figure, we have the one that most, myself included, would also consider to be the most exciting. The first ever LEGO minifigure of General Jan Dodonna. Now, if you're not as much of a Star Wars nerd as I am, he was the guy who gave the briefing to all of the X-Wing pilots on the Death Star's one and only weakness. That, of course, being the one thermal exhaust port. And Yeah, it's honestly a little surprising, considering that that is a fairly important scene in the movie. It's a bit surprising that this is the first time we've ever gotten a figure of General Dodonna. But luckily, it is a very good one. So it was mostly worth the wait. Although even then I could have done with this figure a few years earlier, but... Starting off, you can see that he has the Doc Brown hairpiece in white, which I think was probably the best choice for him. He does have some very long, curly hair. The face print is a new one, which actually surprised me. I was expecting them to reuse the Admiral Emmett face from The Last Jedi, but it is very good to get a new print here that just is more accurate to his appearance. Specifically, his appearance in the original Star Wars, as opposed to the actor that played him in Rogue One. But you just have this very pensive face, I would say, where you have the gray eyebrows, and then his white beard with some flecks of gray. That's just a really nice print to get. I really enjoy the look of that. His mouth is fairly far down on his face, but I think it looks good enough, and it allows him to have a very tall forehead, which is only exacerbated by the choice of hairpiece. Now, his alternate face is one that I'm not as big on. I think it's supposed to be a more worried face, but that mouth just... It looks really off, in my opinion. And I don't really know what else to say there. It just looks weird and incorrect. So I'll just switch back to the main face. His torso is new, though it is very similar to some we've had in the past for characters such as Captain Antilles, where you just have the Rebel tan jacket with the nougat at the top over a dark tan shirt. Unlike Captain Antilles, though, here that print continues down into the legs to make the coat appear much longer. I really like that. However, what I'm not as big a fan of is how that's all printed onto light tan legs, meaning that after his pants end, he's just wearing light tan boots, I guess. And I'm never a fan of when LEGO does this. I think it would have looked a lot better if they'd gone with dark tan legs and had the light tan be printed on. But maybe in that case the color would have been a little faded, so I get why they went with this choice. I just also would have liked to see how it looked the other way, I guess. But turning around to the back, his back print is very simple, but works completely. And his accessory is just the standard blaster piece, but in a pearl silver, which is a very good piece to get since that's still not very common. With it only first appearing in 2015 with the Force Awakens sets, and only having a few appearances every year since then. But yeah, that is General Dodonna, and that is the minifigure selection of LEGO Star Wars, set number 75301, Luke Skywalker's X-Wing Fighter. Overall, I think that the selection in this set is truly admirable. Definitely one of the best X-Wing minifigure selections, period, for the entire history of the theme. My favorite is definitely General Dodonna here, sorry, but they're all great. I enjoy the updates to Luke, and Leia is also a great figure to get in such a cheap set. R2 is R2, but you need R2. So, yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say about the figures, so now let's move on to the build itself. So, here we have the new 2021 LEGO X-Wing Fighter, a set that gained instant backlash upon its reveal for having less pieces than previous models and therefore being cheaper? Now, personally, I don't see that as anything but a good thing as long as it doesn't negatively impact the model in terms of appearance or playability. But a lot of LEGO Star Wars fans were really cheesed off by that, with some going so far as to call this set the death of LEGO Star Wars, or claiming that they're trying to reboot the line, and yeah, those are both completely asinine takes, but if you are worried that for this set's decreased piece count and price, they had to cut some corners, be it it's not as playable, it's not very sturdy, it's less detailed, it's small with bad proportions, I'm just going to put all of those fears to rest, because, in my opinion, not only is this set not negatively impacted by its decreased piece count, but it actually greatly benefits from it, because this is by far the sleekest and most accurately proportioned X-Wing LEGO has ever released, while still maintaining a very similar level of detail to those previous models, which, reminder, ranged from $30 to $40 more expensive than this one, at least in the US. And this set also is not much smaller than the previous models at all and maintains the same proportions. For the dimensions, it is about 32.5 centimeters long with a 28 centimeter wingspan, or about 12.5 inches long with an 11-inch wingspan. For comparison, that's about an inch shorter in either direction than the 2018 X-Wing, which I don't think is a major loss. But anyway, starting by looking at the model itself, we'll start up at the very front with the nose cone, which deviates from previous models, because previously they would always just use one prefab large 4x6 multi-tiered slope piece up at the front, whereas here it's brick-built using multiple pieces, so you can have a nice curve on the top with multiple levels of sloping at the sides. And in my opinion, this is a massive improvement for several reasons. Number one, because of the proportions, this is much more accurate. The old nose cones were much too large, both too long, and also, more importantly, in my opinion, too wide. Because while the nose cone on the X-Wing does jut out a little bit compared to the rest of the nose, it's just a tiny bit, like you see here, where you can see that this is exactly 1/2 of a plate height, or 1/6 of a brick height, jutting out on either side, which I think is perfect. Normally, it would be upwards of half a plate in width jutting out from either side, which is way too much. That is just a lot of extra width that doesn't look good. And also, with this one, the sloping down on the sides is much more severe, which is also accurate, and this really helps this nose cone to almost look like an arrowhead, which makes the set look so much more aerodynamic and fast and cool. And accurate as well. Going back to the nose proper, you have one of the new 2x6 tiles with a sticker on it, which looks nice, as well as a couple of 1x2 ventilation pieces. Moving back, you have the landing gear, which is the first one in a very long time to actually use a skid piece. The last set to use that was actually the 1999 X-Wing. The previous several versions, every set to come in between that one and this one, just used a 1x3 tile that had a hinge on one end. And this one is articulated so it can move back and forth, which helps for when you're coming in to make a landing, so it can just go to whatever angle you need it to be. But some people have complained, and it is a bit of a valid complaint, where, unlike all those previous models, this landing gear cannot retract. Normally it could fold up into the nose. Here, that's not the case. But I don't mind this for two reasons. Number one, because in the original Star Wars, they actually didn't build the X-Wing models with retractable landing gear. It was just something that you would swap on and off. So when they're taking off of Yavin 4, for example, the X-Wing's landing gear are still firmly attached. There is no canonical folding up mechanism we see in the original movie. And speaking of swapping on and off, the real reason I don't mind this is because if you don't want the landing gear showing, it's a Lego set. You can just pull it off. So, yeah, I suppose that is a minor thing that this set does worse than previous models, but I don't think it's nearly as major as some other people have made it out to be. But moving back to the cockpit area, aside from this nice red striping here, which I do like, you have a 1x8 tile, which I think does a good job at just making this a little beefier when we get up to the cockpit, while still not being too wide. But my one major complaint with this area, and probably my main complaint with the set as a whole, which, again, is one that I could see a lot of people disagreeing with, because it would actually take away from the sleekness and detail a little bit, but I think it is an important feature that I'm really disappointed they left out. There should be a stud shooter up in here for the proton torpedo launcher, because, you know, the whole climax of the movie is that the X-Wings are going down the trench to fire their proton torpedoes into the exhaust port. And I really loved how on the Force Awakens X-Wings and in the 2018 Rebel X-Wing, they had just little stud shooters up at the front to be your proton torpedo launchers. I thought that was a really cool usage of that part and a really cute little play feature to reenact what happens in the movie. So I think it's really unfortunate that feature is no longer available on this model. I mean, it's not a major thing, of course, just something I really liked and I wish they would have kept. But going to the cockpit itself, you can see that it uses the newer style of X-Wing cockpit piece with a light gray print on it. I think light gray is a nice color for this. On previous models, they've used both metallic silver and sand blue, but for the color scheme of it in the original movie, I think that the light bluish gray is the most accurate color. And it should be noted that this is not a new print, as this light bluish gray print version also appeared in the 2020 Episode 9 X-Wing. But anyway, folding that open so we can see inside, you have just a little seat for Luke. No tiles, but no studs, but his legs will just slot into that one piece and he'll then just sit on the tile. And he has a slope as well for the seat back. Nothing super detailed, but it works well enough. What I don't think works well enough, though, is my other main complaint with the set, which is this control panel. It's just a generic print that they've had in a bunch of sets, especially recently, and I don't think that works at all. There you can see it, and, it's not a bad print, but for the X-Wing fighter, we see the targeting computer a lot in the original movie. It's used a lot just to show what's going on, for visual exposition, I suppose would be a good word for it. So I think that they should have gone with a specialized design. Whether it be like the original X-Wing that I don't have, or the 2012, which I do, and use a new printed piece. This one here from the 2012 X-Wing I think looks really nice. Or even if they'd gone with a sticker, I think. I would not have at all minded having a sticker just to have that be an accurate targeting computer. So that's a little unfortunate, but anyway, you have the seat, so you can just fit Luke inside. And unlike most other X-Wings, in this one you don't actually have to have him sitting back all the way, because normally they would have him, leaning back, so he's practically lying down. With this one, you can actually have him sitting up fairly far in here. Okay, not that high, but like this. Yeah, that looks pretty good. He is sitting up fairly high in there compared to most models. That's really nice. Again, especially considering the fact that this set is so much cheaper, they really improved in a lot of areas. And then, of course, behind Luke, we also have our little spot to put R2, just on a couple of jumpers. And this is an area that a lot of people have complained about, and I get it. He is way too high up in there, but that is really just because of how they redesigned the wing mechanism that you'll see in a minute. You really can't get him down much lower than that. However, if you did want to, you could just remove the two jumper plates that he's currently standing on, which would put him down one plate further, which would look better. But anyway, on the sides of there, you have these pieces, which have some nice stickers. This one actually having a bit of dark red there. But moving back to the wing area, you can see that here we have this large Technic construction that goes this wide on the top, and it goes all the way through to the bottom and all the way through the middle. So that is just a massive block of Technic that you build. And it is a little confusing, but it's not too bad. And you can see that there are a few stickers up top, because this in the center is supposed to just be mechanical detailing, and they had to use white Technic beams there, so those are stickered. Mine are a little offset because if you have them correctly centered, then the edges will start to come up because, these pieces have rounded edges. So that is a little unfortunate, but it's not that big a deal in my opinion, and for how great the feature works, it's definitely worth it. But before we do that, you can see that the wings are nicely proportioned, and you do have several stickers on each upper wing. We have one here with your Red 5 detailing, one here for just some mechanical detailing, and then on top of the engines you also have a sticker. Those engines actually being a brand new piece for the set, where they're a round 3x3 element, and they look really good in terms of the size and shaping and proportions. However, in terms of inner detail, they are rather lacking, since there should be some, like, a T-shaped detail in there, and that's just completely absent. Not really sure what they could have done in there, since these aren't large enough to do the design they did on the 2018 X-Wing, which I'm glad, because those engines were way too big and looked not great. And if they went for a stickered 2x2 tile like the 2012 X-Wing, that wouldn't reach to the edges. So I don't really know what they could have done here, but I don't think it's a massive deal. Like, it's a little unfortunate and probably the biggest miss in terms of detail on the whole X-Wing. And I just fired off one of our play features accidentally. But anyway, so speaking of play features, guess we're getting to these a little earlier than I'd thought, but on the undersides of each wing, of each bottom wing, rather, you have a spring-loaded shooter, and you would just push up on those to fire them. They fire out with much ferocity, and if you're not careful, and you're just trying to move the set around a little when reviewing it, you could accidentally fire one across your room and lose it forever. Hang on a tick. Found it. But, yeah. I think the spring shooters are a really nice feature, and they're great to have, of course. But, as for where they're located, I think that they're great to have them on the bottom wings. However, their absence on the top wings, I'm not positive on. On one hand, it definitely looks a lot better, because it would break up the sleek look if you had these big bricks on top that were also the wrong color just to fire out your shooters. But on the other hand, and you have 4 cannons and you only have 2 blasters, so in terms of playability and, like, your imaginative play, that's definitely not as good for play as it could have been, but it's a massive improvement to display. So not really sure which way would be better, but I'm fine with this, just because, again, this is such a sleek model, and having those spring shooters up on top would have harmed that fact. Yes, just inserting those. You can also see that you have the 4 large cannons, one on each wing, and these are probably the best design on any minifigure scaled X-Wing. We're still missing the little T detail that you should have right at the edge, like right up here. That's not happening, but no other minifigure scaled X-Wing has had that either, so it's fine. Not a huge detail, but yeah, I really like the use of all of the Technic wheel pieces there. And if we just spin this around, and we'll also lift it up, you can see that the spring shooters are just held in by a couple of these sloped pieces. And at the back, you have your 4 engines, which look nice, as well as this little area with some nice greebling. Really like the look of that. And this is another area where you could say that the 2018 one was a little more accurate, because this one should be kind of a hexagonal design. This one's essentially just squarish, just with little rounded corners, but I prefer this because that one looked awkward and the sides didn't really connect up. This one looks much more sturdy, which is good. And at the bottom, you can also see that in the back, you also have landing gear, which can get a little spun out, which is unfortunate, but they're nice, and again, nice to have skids in the back finally. Haven't had those for 22 years, so it's great to see them again. Now, all that we really have left to look at is the wing folding mechanism, and in my opinion, this set has both the simplest and best wing folding mechanism ever seen on a minifigure scaled LEGO X-Wing. It's fairly simple. you can see that you just have this little light bluish-gray Technic nubbin in the back, and all you do is pick up the set, push that down, and your wings fold perfectly to the correct angles very smoothly. And if you just want to see that for more of a frontward angle, accidentally firing off a shooter, just push that down, and there you go. That mechanism is just fantastic, and again, it's very smooth, which is great. On most previous LEGO X-Wings, the wings would just snap into place. Here they actually have a nice smooth motion to them, which looks so much better where I'm concerned. And when you want the wings to close, just land the model, and they shut up just like that. And now, that is a really nice feature, of course, since when it's landed, you would want the wings to close up. And there isn't any special mechanism to that. Like on the 2018 X-Wing, they got that by having a little Technic mechanism with a cone. Here, it's just because the wings don't have any rubber bands or friction in them. When you land it, the force just automatically pushes them back into the closed position, which, while it is really nice, does unfortunately mean that as the set comes out of the box, you can't really display it just with the wings open, because whenever you have it sitting on any surface, it'll automatically go into the landed position. And now don't worry, that is a very simple issue to solve. You'll just need to prop it up a little bit. So what I would do is just take a 1x2x2 clear panel piece and attach that up at the front of the X-Wing. And then at the back, take a 1x2x3 paneling piece and just put it right up in this area. Or a bit further back, actually, because if it's too far up, then it won't balance right. But just have it like this, and the wings can fully open while the X-Wing is on a surface. So obviously very simple to do, and even if you don't have these exact clear pieces, it's something that you can probably do just using parts you have in your collection. So that's very nice. The one thing, of course, being that since these pieces are not attached on super securely, if you try to slide it along a table or move it, just not super carefully, the pieces are apt to break off, but as long as you don't do that, it should be fine. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about the new 2021 LEGO Star Wars Luke Skywalker's X-Wing Fighter. It is a really great build, very accurate to the movie, the proportions are great, the stickers work very well, all of the details are very well implemented. Best wing opening mechanism on any LEGO X-Wing, in my opinion. The landing gear look great. I mean, yeah, there just really aren't that many negatives. Again, for me, the main thing is just I wish that we did have the little proton torpedo launchers on the sides, but again, that would be inaccurate and it would mess up the sleekness. So even then, even if it is something I would have liked, it does still somewhat benefit from not having those. So I really don't have any complaints with this model. And while we're here at the very end, I should also take a bit to discuss the building experience, which in my opinion was very fun. Essentially, you start off just by building the nose in Bag 1 and the cockpit. Just all of this area is in Bag 1. In Bag 2, you move back and you build the Technic mechanism, as well as this little section at the back. And then Bags 3 and 4 go into the wings, and I think it's a very fun build and it goes together really well, as long as you don't do all 4 wings individually, because that will get very boring. But since the wings on the top are mirrored and the wings on the bottom are mirrored, you could very easily do both wings on, well, the 2 bottom wings at the same time and the 2 top wings at the same time, which makes the building experience a lot better, and that is definitely how I would recommend building the set. But anyway, that's really all I have to say for this segment. So now let's just look at the box, instruction manual, extra pieces, and then we can wrap up this review. The set comes in this medium-sized $50 box size, and the design on the front, of course, has the X-Wing flying through the Death Star trench. Now, this is a very similar box design as what was used on the 2018 X-Wing, but obviously they're the same ship in the same scene, so that totally makes sense. Yeah, nice just angle for the ship, shows it off very well. On the left side, you have all of your info. In the bottom right corner, you have your 4 figures, and interestingly, it should be noted that everywhere on the box, and in all of the product images for the set, the blasters for Princess Leia and General Dodonna are actually switched compared to how the instructions tell you to give them out. So that's interesting. Personally, I do actually kind of prefer how it's shown in all of the images, with Leia having the nice silver blaster and Dodonna having the little black pistol, but I build the sets for the reviews according to the instructions, which is why I reviewed them as such. Yeah, not much else to say there. Obviously, this has the standard white greebling box design we've had for LEGO Star Wars since 2019, and personally, that's not a design I'm very fond of. I just don't think white greebling with a black logo really has a Star Wars vibe to it, I guess is the best way of saying it. It doesn't really feel like Star Wars packaging, it just feels like generic Lego-y packaging, which I'm not a huge fan of, and I wish that they would go back to a more Star Wars-y design. But unfortunately, we've had this box since 2019, and they're keeping it through 2021, so it seems as though this is definitely going to become the norm for a while, which is unfortunate, in my opinion. You do also have Darth Vader up here at the top, which obviously makes sense with this being an original trilogy set. Turning the box around to the back, you just have another angle where you can see our 4 figures with the X-Wing landed in the Yavin 4 hangar. And interestingly, in the background, you can see images of the X-Wings as they appeared in the original movie. So, that's nice. You can just see some of the different play features shown off in little cutout images. And here, you have a little emblem saying that you can play this ship in LEGO Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. Which is quite interesting, because in the game's trailer that we've already seen, it uses the 2018 style of X-Wing. So I'm curious whether they've actually swapped that out, and when the game actually releases, it'll be the 2021 X-Wing, or if they just mean that you'll be able to play a LEGO X-Wing in the game. But that's really all I have to say about this box, aside from the fact that, as you can see, it is the style with the finger punch tabs, instead of just having tape. And with these tabs, for the last while, how I open them is I just take a knife and just cut down the edge and don't actually punch out the tabs, because not only does the box look a lot nicer with the tabs still attached, but it also closes a lot better as well. Like, you can see it having a bit of trouble. With the tabs, it sometimes won't even close at all when you punch them out, so yeah, in general, I kind of wish LEGO would stop using the tab style and just only do the tape style, but if they're going to keep doing the tabs, that is my little recommendation. Cut down the inside instead of punching them out. You'll thank me later. For a $50 set of such impressive proportions, this set has a very small instruction manual, much smaller than you'd expect. Here on the front, you can just see the standard box image, as well as a QR code for if you want to get the instructions digitally. The set is built throughout 4 numbered bags, concluding on page 103 is when you finish off the model by adding the spring shooters. Then you just have a couple more pages, and then here you have advertisements for the 2021 LEGO Star Wars Winter and Spring Waves, which is kind of funny because when these sets were first released, that's actually how people first saw images of the spring sets, because they hadn't been officially revealed at the time. But since I haven't made any videos on the subject, I'll just give my brief thoughts on each. The TIE Fighter is not as nice as the X-Wing, but still a great set to have at such a cheap price. The Mandalorian set is fine, but not super exciting, since the only exclusive figure is Beskar Mando, and he'll apparently be coming in one of the summer sets. And while I like his speeder bike, the Tusken builds, I feel, Well, this one, the tent is not nearly fleshed out enough, and this feels like they put too much effort into something that only appears for a few seconds. Wish they just used all of these pieces to make a really nice Tusken Raider camp build. This is the only single-pack microfighter we've ever gotten not to have a pair, and that's all I have to say about it. There's nothing really new here. It's just a Millennium Falcon. 4+ X-Wing is dinky and dumb. Really like these microfighters. I love the brick-built Tauntaun, and that new Luke figure is great. Definitely picking up this one. And also definitely picking up the new Imperial shuttle, because I think the proportions are pretty good. And definitely the detail is probably the best we've had on any minifigure scaled shuttle. And it is just one of my favorite ships from the original trilogy, so it'll be great to finally have one. Moving on, you can also see the minifigures from all of these sets. This set actually being the only one from the first half of 2021 to include more than 3 figures, even if one of them is an R2 unit. And so yeah, you can see that. Also, the mistake they printed in all of these sets where they gave Return of the Jedi Luke a blue lightsaber instead of green. Don't worry, we do know that that is not in the final Imperial shuttle set. That's just a rendering goof. Then you have an ad for the LEGO Skywalker Saga game, if ever that actually comes out. And then you just have your parts list. And Win Robot. Every day. There's not a day that goes by when I don't miss the Win Kid. Tragic. Finally, we have our very meager selection of extra pieces. You get a brick separator, an extra spring shooter, and then just 6 other pieses where, an extra lightsaber hilt is nice, and the stamp piece is cool, but just not a whole lot here in terms of extras. This set just doesn't use very many small pieces, so yeah. Not really much to say here, so let's just move on to the final thoughts segment. So, overall, would I recommend LEGO Star Wars, set number 75301, Luke Skywalker's X-Wing Fighter? Well, if you do not currently have a LEGO X-Wing and you are a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy, and especially of the original movie, then my answer is absolutely yes, because this is a fantastic set. Easily the best minifigure-scaled original trilogy X-Wing they've ever made. It is extremely accurate, both in terms of proportions and detail. It comes with a great selection of figures. It has great playability, and it also comes at a very affordable price. It is just a fantastic LEGO X-Wing. Now, if you already do have a LEGO X-Wing and you're thinking of upsizing, well, I don't feel as comfortable making that decision since I don't have very many previous X-Wings to compare this to, so that'll just be a decision you have to make for yourself. However, I will say that this set is very fantastic and the best X-Wing they've ever done, so it is definitely a question at the very least. But yeah, just not that much to say. It is a fantastic set, great minifigures, just a couple of minor flaws, like there is no engine detail, and I suppose there also isn't anywhere to store Luke's lightsaber when he's piloting it, so you just have to leave that on the side, but that is a very minor issue as far as I'm concerned, and something that's prevalent in a lot of LEGO sets, including many previous X-Wings. But yeah, so great set, and one I would definitely recommend. And thank you all so much for watching this video, but for right now, this is Retro Brick Reviews, signing off.